What would you do if the one person you trusted most, your own blood, smiled in your face while quietly erasing your future behind your back? Most women would have screamed, slammed doors, fought with fists and fury, but not Lena. No, Lena didn't raise her voice. She raised her silence. And sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon of all. It began with a funeral. Of course it did. Doesn't every family drama start with death? The air was thick with lilies, regret, and long-held resentments. Lena stood in black, her back straight, her hair pinned tight like a woman holding in a scream that had marinated for years. Her father's casket slid into the earth, and with it every unspoken promise he'd ever made, especially the one he whispered to her the night before his second stroke. "The house will be yours, Lena. You've always been the one who stayed, the one who took care of everything." Did she believe him? Not completely. But it had given her just enough hope to keep showing up to appointments, to late-night emergencies, to the slow erosion of her own life. You know how it goes. The golden child shines bright even when they're absent. And Lena's brother Marcus was gold-plated from birth. Charming, loud, everyone's favorite. Even when he failed upward. Lena, on the other hand, was the quiet daughter, the shadow caretaker, the one who became invisible by being indispensable. So when the will was read, and Lena's name was mentioned only once as someone to notify, the room went silent. Her mother clutched a tissue and looked away. Marcus glanced down, avoiding her eyes. The house, their childhood home, the very one Lena had been maintaining for over a decade, was left entirely to Marcus. No explanation, no clause, no apology. And Lena, she didn't cry. Not then, not in front of them. She simply nodded and walked out, like a woman stepping through fire without a single spark catching on her clothes. Because you see, Lena already knew. She knew this family didn't see her. They used her presence like wallpaper, comforting, consistent, and entirely taken for granted. They thought she'd accept it, that she'd retreat into her studio apartment with a wine glass and a broken spirit. They didn't know her at all. And maybe you don't either. Not yet. 3 months passed. The house grew noisier. Marcus moved in with his new girlfriend, a woman with a laugh like cracked glass and an Instagram full of inspirational quotes she didn't live by. They redecorated, tore down Lena's garden, turned the library into a game room, threw parties in the place where their father once read Hemingway aloud by the fireplace. Lena never said a word, but she watched. Every week she drove by. No one noticed. And when the property taxes lapsed because Marcus had no idea how to handle the real responsibility that came with his inheritance, she watched that too. She waited until the foreclosure notice was nailed to the door like a scarlet letter. Then she acted. Cash offer. No contingencies. Lena had savings. She always did. Her father once told her it was prudish to be so frugal. But prudence has its moments. This was one of them. And just like that, Lena bought the house her brother lived in. He didn't know at first. The paperwork was processed quietly, cleanly. The bank had washed its hands. The property was hers now. Every wooden beam, every dusty corner, every memory. And one morning, as Marcus stumbled down the stairs hungover and barefoot, he found Lena standing in the kitchen. Calm, controlled, holding a cup of tea like it was a weapon of choice. "This isn't funny," he'd said. "You're joking." She looked at him the way a mother looks at a son who's just broken something sacred. "I own the house now," she said. "You pay rent or you leave." Have you ever seen a man unravel without even being touched? Marcus did, because Lena hadn't screamed. She hadn't fought. She'd simply outgrown her silence and turned it into power. And that was only the beginning. Marcus laughed at first. Not the good kind. The arrogant, snorting kind. The laugh of a man who'd never been denied, never been outplayed, especially not by his own sister. But the laugh faltered, died mid-sentence. Because Lena didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She just stood there, arms crossed, leaning against the kitchen counter like it belonged to her, which of course it did. He paced the kitchen, muttering, grabbing his phone, likely to call their mother. Their mother, who had once called Lena too intense when she asked about fairness. Their mother, who had helped Marcus decorate this very house, her house once. A house that now belonged in silent irony to the child she never favored. "You wouldn't do this to me," Marcus said, voice rising. "You're not that cold." Oh, but he didn't know. You see, the problem with always being the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who doesn't cause trouble, is that people think you won't ever change. They think your kindness is a cage, that you won't dare open the door and step out. But Lena had been unlocking that door in her mind for years. "I gave you time," she said evenly. 3 months. The taxes were overdue. You didn't pay. The bank foreclosed. I bought it legally. You're my tenant now. He scoffed. You can't evict your own brother. I can, she said. And if you keep disrespecting the property, I will. Disrespecting. That was Lena's way of saying you destroyed the garden our father planted. Let your girlfriend graffiti the basement walls and left beer cans on the mantel where his ashes used to sit. But Marcus wasn't listening. He never did. Because men like him hear only what threatens their ego. That night, he didn't sleep. Lena did. She stayed in her hotel suite across town, sipping wine by the window, watching the city stretch like a sleeping giant. She didn't gloat. She reflected. She'd been the vessel for this family's burdens her whole life. The one who cleaned up messes, balanced their chaos, kept everything functioning. The price, her own peace. But now the scales were shifting. You might wonder why not sell the house? Why not just walk away? Because some wounds need to be seen to heal. And Lena needed to see him live inside the consequences of his choices. To witness what it looks like when the overlooked finally stop being invisible. Days passed, then weeks. Marcus tried to charm her. He invited her for dinner, made her favorite pasta, burned it, of course. He sent long texts reminiscing about childhood memories, carefully edited to exclude the way he always got the bigger slice, the louder applause, the last word. But Lena wasn't hungry for nostalgia. She gave him a lease, a real one, with rules, deadlines, rent due the first. And something in him shifted. You could see it in his posture, shoulders slumped, voice quieter. As if for the first time he felt the weight of adulthood without the cushion of a sister to catch him. Then came the girlfriend. She didn't like the new arrangement. "You're letting your sister control you," she hissed one night, loud enough for Lena to hear from the front porch, where she was pruning the roses Marcus had once trampled. "You're a man, Marcus. Grow a spine." But power built on entitlement crumbles quickly. By the end of that month, the girlfriend left. She packed up her things, mostly Lena's stolen linens, and an antique vase from the living room, and stormed out calling Lena a witch on her way to the Uber. Lena didn't flinch, again. She just watched the car pull away and whispered, "Close the gate behind you." Inside the house, Marcus had started cleaning, picking up after himself, fixing the lock on the back door he broke, asking about utility bills. Quiet, subtle acts that to anyone else might seem mundane, but to Lena, they were seismic. She didn't smile, not yet, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reckoning. And reckoning takes time. It was a Sunday when Marcus finally cracked. Not with yelling, he'd already burned through that phase. Not with pleading, he'd tried that too, with watery eyes and trembling apologies that somehow always circled back to him being the real victim. No, this crack came silently, the kind that doesn't make noise but shifts something permanent. Lena found him sitting on the back steps at dawn barefoot, hunched over a cigarette dangling from fingers that had once clutched luxury steering wheels and women's waistlines with equal ease. He looked smaller now, not in body, but in presence. "Why didn't you fight me when Dad changed the will?" he asked, his voice hoarse. She didn't answer right away. She placed her mug of black coffee on the ledge and sat beside him, not too close. Just enough for him to feel her gravity. "You think I didn't," she finally replied. Because, oh, she had. Not in court, not with lawyers, but in the long sleepless nights where she questioned every memory, every moment she stayed, every dream she postponed because family needed her, because he needed her. "You could have made a scene," he said. "You could have taken it public." Lena turned her head slowly, meeting his eyes. "You mean humiliate the family so they could call me unstable? Ungrateful, vindictive?" The silence between them grew sharp. You see, some women stay silent not because they're weak, but because they're calculating. Because they know the system is rigged to paint them as emotional, hysterical, dangerous. If they dare to show anger that a man shows freely and is praised for. Lena had spent decades in the shadows of emotional gaslighting, of being the buffer, the peacemaker, the mature one, and everyone loves the mature one until she stops making everything easier for them. "You know why he left it to you?" she said, her voice low and calm. "Because he thought you'd fall apart without it, and he thought I'd survive no matter what." Marcus looked at her stunned. That's the thing about being the strong one. They assume your endurance is infinite, that you need nothing, that your silence equals indifference. But strength isn't the absence of need, it's the constant burying of it. "Did you ever even want the house?" he asked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted someone just once to say, 'You matter.'" He nodded slowly, eyes glazed. "I don't think I ever really saw you." Of course not. That was the whole point. The invisible sister, the ghost who cooked, cleaned, arranged hospice care, balanced finances, and stood behind everyone's smiling in family photos while her own life slowly faded into gray. But ghosts don't stay silent forever. That week, Lena started moving things back in. She reclaimed the study, repainted it in the color she loved as a child, storm blue, the hue her father had said was too moody for a girl's room. She pulled her books from storage, lined the shelves like soldiers. She restored her garden planting seeds with her bare hands, whispering to the earth as though it might whisper back. Neighbors began to notice. "Isn't that Marcus's house?" they'd murmur on their walks. "No," said another. "It's hers now. She bought it." And oh, how their tone changed. Curiosity laced with disbelief, because society struggles to process a woman who doesn't explain herself, a woman who doesn't ask permission to rise. Marcus started paying rent on time. Quietly, no more loud music, no more wild parties. The man who once strutted through the halls like a prince now removed his shoes at the door. One night he left a letter on the kitchen table. No dramatic apology, just 5 handwritten lines. "I see what I did now. I see what you gave up. I'm sorry I mistook your silence for absence. Thank you for not destroying me. I wouldn't have been that merciful." She folded the letter carefully and tucked it into the back of a drawer, because she didn't need his words to validate her worth, but still they meant something. Not redemption, not repair, just a beginning. Have you ever tasted the moment you finally stop begging for acknowledgement? It's not sweet. It's something deeper, like still water, like peace. And Lena had never tasted peace like this before. Autumn came, not the cinematic kind with golden leaves and cozy sweaters, the raw kind, wind that howled through cracked windows, trees stripped bare like secrets exposed, the kind of season that didn't beg for beauty, it demanded truth. Lena thrived in it. The house hers now unquestionably breathed differently under her care. It was quieter, but fuller, walls repainted, light fixtures replaced, the scent of jasmine from her tea blending with the soil of her resurrected garden. Every corner spoke of reclamation, not just of space, but of identity. And Marcus. He stayed, on the upper floor, respectfully quiet. His rent payments arrived like clockwork, neatly placed in the basket on the hall table with a handwritten note, "Thank you," not groveling, not fake humility. Just a man learning finally what it meant to be beholden to someone he had once dismissed. He even fixed things now, silently. A broken stair, a leaky faucet, small gestures like apologies in motion. But Lena never asked him to. That was the point. She didn't need his help. She needed his recognition, and more than that, she needed her own. Because for most of her life, Lena had been surviving on borrowed roles. The caretaker, the fixer, the reliable daughter, roles that dried her spirit like sun-exposed paper. But now she was becoming something else. Not a role, a woman. And it wasn't just about Marcus. It was about every dinner she skipped because someone else needed feeding. Every vacation she canceled, every birthday she forgot, every time she was told she was too intense, too sensitive, too much. Every time her anger was called irrational, her ambition unseemly, her boundaries cold. You reading this? Do you know how many women are raised to tolerate invisibility and call it virtue? Do you understand what it costs a person to swallow their voice so long it becomes a lump in their throat? Lena did. And now she was spitting it out, quietly, deliberately. She joined a pottery class, signed up for dance, reconnected with an old friend from university, a woman who once told her, "You were the smartest person in every room but always the quietest." They went to galleries, drank wine that didn't come in bulk bottles, laughed over poetry, and how women like them were always mistaken for plain until they stopped shrinking. One night, Lena came home late. She opened the door and paused. The house smelled different. Not bad, just unfamiliar. Upstairs, Marcus's door was open. He wasn't there. Instead, the hallway light was on, casting soft gold over a row of boxes. He'd moved out. No announcement, no drama, just gone. And taped to one of the boxes a note, "You won, but it doesn't feel like I lost. Thank you for the mirror. I'm finally looking." Lena didn't cry. Not out of coldness, but because some victories don't need tears. They need stillness. She sat on the staircase, tracing the wood grain with her fingers, the same banister they used to slide down as kids, back when life was simple and fairness was just a concept, whispered in bedtime stories. She walked into Marcus's empty room. It was clean, neat. He had even left behind a small photograph in a frame, the two of them at their father's 60th birthday. She hadn't even remembered the picture being taken. In it, Lena was smiling tightly, her eyes distant. But next to her, Marcus was laughing blissfully, unaware. She stared at the photo for a long time. Then she placed it face down in the drawer, because memories are not always meant to be erased, but they don't have to be worshipped either. Later that week, Lena hosted a dinner. Friends filled the dining room, real friends. Women who saw her, listened, laughed without competition. They toasted her new chapter past plates and spoke about futures instead of obligations. And in the corner of the room, a woman who had once been a ghost stood tall, full, entirely herself. No more waiting to be chosen. No more proving her worth. She had claimed it, not with vengeance, but with precision. The house no longer echoed with the past. It hummed with something new, something sacred. Winter arrived like a quiet reckoning. Snow blanketed the garden Lena had nurtured, softening the edges of the world. From her window, she watched the frost lace over her roses, the same ones Marcus had once trampled. Now even in their dormancy they held beauty. Still here. Like her. The house was finally quiet. Not empty, just serene. No chaos, no slamming doors, no footsteps that carried entitlement. Just the steady rhythm of her life unfolding on her terms. She painted again. Bold strokes, violent colors, canvases that screamed what her mouth never could. Her studio, once a junk room, now flooded with northern light, was her sanctuary. The walls bore the truth of her soul, not curated for approval, not masked for comfort. And for the first time, she didn't flinch at the intensity of her own expression. Because intensity was never the enemy, suppression was. One evening, just as twilight kissed the windowsills and the wind curled around the eaves, there was a knock at the door. It had been weeks since Marcus moved out. Lena opened it slowly. There he stood. No flowers, no speech. Just a man holding a modest envelope and eyes that no longer darted nervously, but held stillness. Respect. "I wanted you to have this," he said. "I found it in one of Dad's old boxes." She hesitated, then took it. Inside a letter, old, yellowed, her father's handwriting. "If anything happens to me before I change the will, know this. The house was always meant for you, Lena. You kept it alive. You kept us alive. I just never had the courage to name you the way you deserved. I'm sorry I left it to Marcus. I thought he needed it more. But now I see. You were the roots. You are the home." Her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't validation. It wasn't redemption. It was a wound that no longer bled but still throbbed. Marcus stood there watching her carefully. "I didn't come to stay," he said. I wanted to make sure you read it." Lena folded the letter slowly, not as a keepsake but as closure. "Thank you," she said. He nodded and stepped back into the cold. She closed the door gently this time. No more slamming, no more declarations. Inside the house seemed to exhale, as if it too had been holding its breath. She walked to the fireplace where a new flame crackled, not for anyone else's comfort, not to host, not to perform, but just for her. She poured a glass of red wine, settled into her chair, and watched the flickering shadows dance along the walls. That night she dreamed of her younger self, the girl in pigtails who used to sit on the back steps drawing flowers in the dirt, while the world spun around her without noticing. In the dream, that girl stood up, walked into the house, took up space. In the morning, Lena opened all the windows. Let the winter air pour in, cold, fresh, honest. There were no more ghosts in the corners, no more whispered doubts. Just a woman, whole, unafraid, untethered from the need to be liked, thanked, or chosen. You see, power doesn't always look like dominance. Sometimes it looks like a woman who chooses silence until she doesn't, who chooses forgiveness not to reconcile but to release, who buys the house where she was once forgotten and fills it with the sound of her own becoming. The woman who knows her worth doesn't beg, she watches. Then she rises,